Greetings. Today is 3/29/2020, and this video is about the timing of the first rapture, which is the open door in heaven. And the open door in heaven is what leads the wise virgins, the congregation of Philadelphia, to New Jerusalem. Okay. And then we see them as the elders in New Jerusalem. Okay, earlier I did a video about the location of Gog, the current headquarters of where Gog is, which is in the core of the moon. And it sounded like my computer was acting up a lot, but I'm still gonna post a video because it didn't seem to interfere too much with the main idea. So if that occurs with this one too, I apologize. The technical difficulties, it's a little odd, but doing the best I can with what I have and with the amount of time we have, because if I'm right, we're looking at Tuesday for the open door. We'll see what happens. But I really fine-tuned the timing via Aaron and his sons being consecrated after the setup of the tabernacle, the sanctuary in the wilderness. Okay? Because when you look at the Greek for open door, it's just can mean an entrance or a portal. Okay, and then like we talked about many times in the past, heaven just means space, unless it's specifically talking about New Jerusalem. And then we know where New Jerusalem is. It's in the core of the sun. So in Revelation 4:1, when it says a door standing open in heaven, it's just an open entrance in space. Okay? And I believe it to be a mini wormhole, a mini portal, that the angels come through and gather up the wise virgins, which is the congregation of Philadelphia, and they are the elders in Revelation 4. And they bring them to New Jerusalem to be kept from the hour of trial, which is the next 6+ years. And the wise virgins, the elders, the congregation of Philadelphia, they're the first portion of the body to be ripe for harvest, and they only make up 5% of modern Christianity. Okay? When the Messiah gave us the parable of the 10 virgins, it was in reference to 10%, a tithe, but yet only 5 of them were wise. And as we went over in past videos, virgin means you have the Messiah on the throne in your life. And then harlot means you have other gods on the throne of your life. So there's wise virgins, there's foolish virgins, and then there's harlot Christians. And harlot Christianity makes up 90% of the current body. Wise virgins only make up 5%, and foolish virgins only make up 5%. So those that remain until the second rapture are the foolish virgins and harlot Christianity. And I go over all this in great detail in past videos. But anyway, the 7 churches are actually the 7 portions of the body. And you can actually kind of link them up to the armor of the Almighty too. But anyway, so you have the Church of Philadelphia is the wise virgins. They are the first portion to be ready to be harvested. They're the first ones to be mature, ripe for the harvest. Because there's 3 main raptures, and they parallel the 3 main harvests of ancient Israel: the barley, the wheat, the grapes. Okay? But then there's a total of 4 raptures, because the 144,000 are actually raptured twice. They're raptured up with the wheat harvest, which is the day of redemption, the final preparation before the war in heaven, when the Messiah gathers all of his people into New Jerusalem to be secured before executing the war in heaven. Now, at that time, the 144,000 are raptured up because they are believers. However, the Messiah handpicks them for a special mission and then sends them back in Revelation 8:5. They get sent back. And then they conduct their 1260-day special mission. Then the beast set up the mark after the 1260 days. And the 144,000 offer themselves up in Jerusalem, give themselves over, refuse the mark, and are killed. So they set the example for the new believers that they won during that 1260-day ministry. And then after they lay dead in the streets for a couple days, 3.5 days, then they get raptured up again as the first part of the sacrifice, not first fruits. The first part of the sacrifice. It's different. The English translations translate as first fruits, but the first fruits are actually the wise virgins. The 144,000, they are the first part of the sacrifice. Because since they're there during the time of the wrath and the enemy has jurisdiction, they have to be killed. Same thing goes for the new believers. Because they weren't in Christ at his coming, they don't convert until the time of the wrath. They have to be killed because the enemy has jurisdiction. So they have to refuse the mark, which is the DNA of Apollyon being forced upon remaining humanity. So, to the timing. So we'll start off with the date. Today is the 12th day of the first month of the first year of the first week of the 121st Jubilee, which is the 6,000th year since the start of the Jubilee count at the transformation of a caveman into Adam in 3980 BC, 3/29/2020. And something to understand about the Jubilee count versus the weeks count is they're like 2 gears. And I happen to be dealing with a blown differential with all kinds of gears busted up. So this understanding is kind of relevant to what I'm going through right now in my life. But anyway, the Jubilee count and the weeks count, or the generations count, are not the same. They are 7 years apart. Okay? The Jubilee count begins with the transformation of Adam from caveman into Adam, made in the image, and that began in 3980 BC. However, the 70 weeks, which correspond to the 70 generations, which correspond to the birth of evil, or the first sins, which occurred in 3973 BC, in the 17th day of the second month, when the Antichrist, Apollyon, Azazel, whatever you want to call him, came into the garden and deceived Adam and Eve. And like I said before, I believe that he was the leader of the guardian angels that were helping Adam and Eve in the garden for them 7 years. And that's why Adam and Eve weren't suspicious, because they were dealing with him on and off. So when he came to them and threw that deception out there, they were caught off guard, because it wasn't a snake slithering up talking to them. It was literally the leader of the fallen, or the leader of the angels that were helping them in the garden. So that's why they got deceived. But anyway, when they were deceived, that's when the flesh count began. All right. So you have the Jubilee count versus the flesh count, and they're 7 years apart. Okay. So, and the reason being is like it's like two gears. You know, they can't. A gear can't be face to face, otherwise they'll just smash each other and break. But when they're offset, then they mesh correctly, and the process flows with the turning of the gears. Which, like I said, I believe the universe is one big clock, kind of like gears turning. All right. So that's something to understand about time, is that the Jubilee count and the count of flesh are separate. They're 7 years separate. So, alright, we already did that in the other video. Okay, the setup. Now, the setup is the scriptural reference point for the first rapture. Okay. Now, the first setup occurred in the wilderness when they set up the tabernacle. Okay. Acting as a mobile temple. Okay. So, we go to So the prophecy of the setup is in Daniel 7, 9 and 10, and then 13 to 14. I kept looking until, I believe this is singular, until the throne was set up. The Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was white like snow. His hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him. The angels and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The wise virgins, the elders. The court sat, and this is where we see the elders sitting on their seats, and the books open, and this is when the Messiah is worthy. Okay, so this is Revelation 4, and then we have Revelation 5. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming. He came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. So this is what we see when he's presented as the Lamb, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who overcame and is found worthy. And then he's given his kingdom, which is what we see in Revelation 6:1. Crown was given to him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Alright. So, we see the setup in Daniel 7:9, and then we also see it in Revelation 4:5. Right here. A throne was standing. But when you go into the Greek, it says a throne was set in heaven. But it's really in New Jerusalem. Okay? So, a door standing open in heaven is a portal open in space. An entrance open in space. And then a trumpet tells him to come up. And then a throne was set in New Jerusalem, because he goes into the portal in space, brings him to New Jerusalem. Throne was set in New Jerusalem, and one sitting on the throne is the Almighty. And then the 24 elders, which are the congregation of Philadelphia, the wise virgins, are sitting on their seats around the throne with crowns on their heads. Okay, and this is the fulfillment of the promise that the Messiah gives to the congregation of Philadelphia in Revelation 3. Because we see over here in Revelation 3, the Messiah promises Philadelphia. First, he puts the open portal in front of them. Okay, and then because they kept the word of his patience, they're kept from the hour of testing. And then he says to hold fast so that no one will take your crown. And then he who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my Father, which is a strong position in the temple of New Jerusalem. And then we see all the fulfillments right here with the elders entering the open door in heaven, sitting on the thrones with the golden crowns on their heads, because nobody else has crowns except for the congregation of Philadelphia. The rest only have palms. Okay, so now Exodus 25 to 31 is the instructions for the sanctuary. Okay, because we're talking about the setup. The setup is when the timing of the first rapture of the wise virgins, the congregation of Philadelphia, the elders. So then in Exodus 28 to 29 are the instructions for Aaron and his sons, the priests, for their ministering in the sanctuary. Okay, now Aaron represents the Messiah. His sons represents the congregation of Philadelphia, the elders, the wise virgins. Okay? Now, as we see within the consecration of the priests, it's unleavened bread. Okay? Because that's where the first wave offering occurred and the first burnt sacrifices occurred. Alright? So the first wave offering occurred after the priests well, actually, after the tabernacle was set up, which, as we went over before, that occurs in the 10th day of the first month, which is already passed. Okay, so the 10th day of the first month was Friday, 3/27. Which is the first day of the days of Noah, the days of remembrance. It's when the temple was set up, set, the throne set in heaven in New Jerusalem. It's when the tabernacle was set up in the wilderness. And it's when the Lamb is chosen. Okay. Alright, where are we at here? Consecration. Alright, let's go to Leviticus 28:29. Okay. Exodus 29. Okay, so in Exodus 29, it's talking about the consecration of priests. Okay. Oh, yes, so I wrote that wrong. Okay, so this is... Oh, I was just saying it wrong. I was saying Leviticus, but it's Exodus. Leviticus is when it actually occurs. Because right now, the Almighty is instructing Moses what to do. Right here in Exodus 28 and 29. This is during the 40 days and 40 nights. The Almighty is instructing him what to do. Okay? And this is where the wave offering and the burnt offering are instructed. And as you can see, it's right here in Exodus 29:24, and it's in reference to the ordination of the priests. Okay, then the Almighty says, "You shall take the fat from the ram, and the fat tail, and the fat that covers the entrails, and the lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, and on the right thigh, for it is a ram of ordination." They're being ordained. Okay? And 1 cake of bread, and 1 cake of bread mixed with oil, 1 wafer from the basket of unleavened bread, which is set before the Almighty in the tabernacle. And you shall put all these in the hands of Aaron and in the hands of his sons, and shall wave them as a wave offering before the Almighty. You shall take them from the hands and offer them up in smoke on the altar, on the burnt offering, for a soothing aroma before the Almighty. It is an offering by fire to the Almighty. Okay, you see that? So the wave offering, the burnt offering, it's all about the ordination of the priests, specifically the high priest, which is the Messiah. And in this case, in this instance, it's Aaron. And then the priests, who are the elders in New Jerusalem, they are acting as the priests, the same as the priests, the sons of Aaron and the Levites in the ancient wilderness. Okay? So, meaning, this is telling us when this occurs, which is unleavened bread. Okay? And then we see the crowning. So Exodus 29:6 is Revelation 5:13. 29:6. Yes. The crowning. Alright? So when the Messiah gets crowned, that's when everything acknowledges it. It's the same timing as when we see the fire come down, and then for Elijah, and then all of Israel fall on their faces. Same thing's occurring, right? Then Exodus 32 to 39 is the golden calf, the renewal of the covenant, the start of the construction. Then in Exodus 40, the tabernacle is erected, which is set up. The setup occurs on the 10th day of the first month. Okay, but now interestingly, in Exodus 40:17, it tells us the 10th day of the first month in the second year, which is exactly where we are now. We are in the second year of the 70th week. So after they set up, the Almighty commands that Aaron and his sons, which are the priests, so we got Aaron, high priest, and his sons, priests, are to be consecrated to perform the work of the tabernacle. So the throne already is set when John is taken into New Jerusalem, meaning the 10th day already occurred. And then we see the 10th day of the first month in the second year. That just passed on Friday, was the 10th day of the first month of the second year in the 70th week. All right. Then we see Leviticus 1:7 is about the laws, about the offerings. Okay, then Leviticus 8 is about the consecration of Aaron and his sons. So it's the high priest and the priests, which is Revelation 4 and 5. Leviticus 8, 1 to 2, first fruits of the barley ceremony equals unleavened bread. Leviticus 8, 6 to 9 is the crowning. Leviticus 8, wave offering, first fruits of the barley. Leviticus 8 shows the fire offering, which is what we talked about, the timing in Elijah. Okay? So now, the timing of the first rapture can be discerned from the timing of the setup and the consecration of Aaron and his sons as priests. Aaron equals Messiah. Aaron's sons equals wise virgins, elders, the priests. The timing should occur at the same time of the first fruits of the barley ceremony, also known as the morrow of the Sabbath. Okay, and this has been confounded once again. The prophecy of time. The Almighty told us that we would have time would be disturbed. We wouldn't know the proper days. And this is a perfect example because so many say the first fruits of the barley are on so many different days. Alright? But I believe I found the answer via the Spirit of the Almighty, the Spirit of truth, and that the morrow of the Sabbath is the morning of the Sabbath, and it's talking about the high Sabbath of unleavened bread, which is the first day, which would be when the Messiah was being crucified, while the leaven was being removed, and then that evening was the high Sabbath that they were preparing for. Okay? Leviticus 8:27 is the first wave offering, and it occurs during the consecration of the priests. Leviticus 8:27. He then put all these on the hands of Aaron and his sons presented them as a wave offering before the Almighty, in which this is the fulfillment of the instructions that were given in Exodus that we were just, in Exodus that we were just talking about. Leviticus 8 is the fulfillment because Moses was given the instructions when he was on the mountain 40 days, 40 nights. Then he came down, there was the golden calf, and all that happened. He broke the tablets, blah, blah, blah. So the actual fulfillment didn't occur until Leviticus 8. And then we see in Leviticus 8:27 is the wave offering. And that's what the first fruits of the barley ceremony is. The wave offering. And it all has to do with the consecration of the high priest and the priests. Okay? Then we see Leviticus 8:35, which is the priest being consecrated for 7 days, and that's the 7 days of unleavened bread. Okay? Now we have in Exodus 40:17 equals Daniel 7:9 equals Revelation 4:2-3, which is the setup. 10th day of the first month. Leviticus 8:2 equals Daniel 7:10 equals Revelation 4:4 equals the first rapture, the open door, the portal that opens in space to bring the wise virgins to New Jerusalem, which is in the core of the sun currently. Leviticus 8:3 equals Leviticus 23:7, which is the solemn assembly when they're all gathered. Leviticus 8:6-32 equals Daniel 7:13 equals Revelation 5 is the first fruits of the barley ceremony, followed by the remaining days of unleavened bread. Leviticus 9:24 equals 1 Kings 8:13 equals Revelation 5:13, which is the timing of the open door, the fire coming down, and then Israel falling on their faces because the Messiah is crowned. Alright? So, this is the ceremony of the first fruits of the barley. Okay. At twilight, at the entering of the 14th day, which would be the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the solemn assembly. Okay. Because on the 13th day of the 13th day of the first month is the Passover lamb preparation day. Then at twilight which would be the 14th day. So on the 13th is the Passover lamb preparation day. Then from the 13th going into the 14th is the meal at twilight. Then on Passover day, which is 14, the final removal of leaven occurs, which is when the crucifixion was. Then there is a solemn ceremony, a solemn assembly at twilight from 14 going into 15. And then this is when the first fruits of the barley ceremony begins at sunset. And the rehearsal was three Sanhedrin would come from the temple. So the temple door would open. 3 Sanhedrin would come out to reap the first fruits of the barley. Okay? Which is a picture of the open door in heaven. The Sanhedrin coming out to reap are the angels coming out to reap. Okay? Now, when they come out, there are bundles of barley pre-prepared for the Sanhedrin. They don't actually have to go out to reap, to cut it out into the fields to cut. They've already been cut and bundled for them. And I believe that this is a picture of the wise virgins are already marked. That's why there isn't any time or opportunity for a foxhole repentance of the foolish virgins or the harlot Christians. The preparation is a established thing at the time of the open door. And I believe this is what the prepared bundles mean, is that they've already been marked, and the Messiah already knows who they are. And the other ones who aren't, he doesn't recognize because they're not obeying the commandments, which is a fulfillment of Matthew 7:23, and then of course the foolish virgins not allowed into the feast at that time. Okay. Then, as the sun setting, the Sanhedrin would ask, "Has the sun set?" The people, the solemn assembly, would respond, "Yes, with the sickle, yes, into this basket, yes, on this Sabbath, yes, shall I reap, yes." Then the first fruits were taken into the temple, which is the open door, the transfer of the wise virgins with the angels into the portal, the wormhole, taken to New Jerusalem. Then the first fruits were threshed, parched, winnowed, milled, and sifted into fine flour, which I believe is a picture of the wise virgins being transformed from flesh into their redeemed body. Okay. Then on the morning, which is the morrow of the Sabbath, the first fruit, which would be the morning of the 15th. So the ceremony begins at twilight from the 14th going into the 15th at the solemn assembly. Then the priests go into the temple and they thresh, parch, winnow, mill, sift the flour. And then the morrow of the Sabbath is when they present it to the Almighty. Okay? So they take all the things that are described in for the consecrations of the priests. They take it and they wave it before the Almighty, and then they burn it as an offering by fire to the Almighty. Okay? The wave offering. They wave it and burn it. Okay? And then the individual male Israelites would go into the temple and present their personal sacrificial lamb and their personal first fruits. Okay? And this was the Passover pilgrimage. Like I said, I believe each pilgrimage is a picture, is a rehearsal of a main rapture, a harvest. The Passover pilgrimage is the wise virgins. They are ripe, they are mature first, they are raptured first at the open door. Those that remain, they need to be refined, or they need to be purged and refined. The wise virgins need to be refined. They're already faithful to the Messiah. They have him on the throne of their hearts and the throne of their life, but they're not obeying the commandments, doing the will of the Father. So they have to be refined to do that. Harlot Christianity needs to be purged of harlotry, so they need to put the Messiah first, and they need to keep the commandments. So the second rapture, the second main harvest rapture, is the wheat harvest, or the Pentecost pilgrimage. So the first rapture is the Passover pilgrimage, the barley harvest. Second rapture is the Pentecost pilgrimage, the wheat harvest. Okay, and the barley is unleavened, meaning they don't have the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. But the next rapture is 2 loaves, representing the two portions of the body that remain, and they have leaven. So they had hypocrisy at the time of the first rapture. and that's why it has leaven. And then the third rapture is the newbies, which is the grape harvest, the tabernacle pilgrimage, and that occurs once the mark is set up and they're killed for refusing the mark. And then they're raptured up after they're killed, just like the 144,000. Okay, so the whole point of this video is that I believe that I found the true timing of the first fruits of the barley, and that the timing of when Aaron and his sons, the priests, were consecrated is the same timing of unleavened bread, which is the same timing as the Passover pilgrimage and the first rapture. Okay, so today is the 29th, 12th day. Tomorrow is the Passover lamb preparation day. And then tomorrow at twilight, we should be breaking unleavened bread and drinking wine in remembrance of the Messiah. And then Tuesday would be Passover day 1, because in the scripture it talks about the 8th day. Well, it gets a little confusing since unleavened bread's only 7 days, but actually there's an extra day because of Passover. So Passover day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8. Unleavened bread day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. So unleavened bread day 7, Passover day 8, end on the same day, which is the 21st of the first month, and that's the second solemn assembly. But the first solemn assembly is they gathered for the first fruits of the barley ceremony that begins when they gathered at the door of the temple, of the tabernacle, and then the priests would perform the gathering for the offerings. Okay? And then I believe strong possibility is that the crowning event will occur on unleavened bread day 1, which would be April 1st, April Fool's Day. As if the Almighty's shown that the world who's left behind were foolish. Alright? But if the Almighty goes by Jerusalem, which I believe He does, or I should say Jerusalem is in sync with Him, then the strongest possibility that I see for the timing of the first rapture would be about noon. East coast of USA on Tuesday. Okay? And another thing is that I think maybe a possibility of the 3 Sanhedrin may represent 3 areas of Earth. Meaning in one area it would be 6 p.m., another area midnight, another area 6 a.m. I'm not 100% about that, but you know, this seems right to me. I believe I finally got it right. Time will tell. We only have a short time. And I think that Tuesday at around noon on the east coast of America, which would be around sunset, right before sunset in Jerusalem, is basically the highest watch that I could find. So, time will tell. See what happens. And tomorrow I'm going to try to put out the second part of the 7,000 year timeline. Like I said, I wanted to get this out because this, in my opinion, completely clarifies when the first rapture occurs, which is the first fruits of the barley and unleavened bread, because it's the consecration of the priests, which in New Jerusalem will be the wise virgins, and the Messiah is the high priest. And when we see him as the lamb that has been slain in Revelation 5, that's when Aaron was consecrating the altar and all that stuff. So I encourage you to study Exodus, where it talks about the consecration of the priests and the setup, and Leviticus, same thing. And until the next video, take care, and may the will of the Almighty YaHushuWaH be done in the name of His only begotten Son, YaHushuWaH. Take care.